Egypt, a country in North Africa. Egypt, officially the Arab Republic of Egypt, is a transcontinental country in North Africa and the Middle East, with its capital located in its largest city, Cairo. Egypt also extends into Asia by virtue of holding the Sinai Peninsula. Egypt is bordered by Israel and the Gaza Strip to the northeast, by Sudan to the south, and by Libya to the west. The country is bounded by the Mediterranean and the Red Seas to the north and east, respectively, and geographically dominated both by the Nile River and its fertile, well watered valley, and by the eastern and western deserts. Egypt is perhaps best known as the home of the ancient Egyptian civilization, with its temples, hieroglyphs, mummies, and visible above all, its pyramids. Less well known is Egypt's medieval heritage, courtesy of Coptic Christianity and Islam. Ancient churches, monasteries, and mosques punctuate the Egyptian landscape. Egypt stimulates the imagination of Western tourists like few other countries and is probably one of the most popular tourist destinations worldwide. Ever since the 2011 revolution, tourism, which provides about 15% of employment in Egypt, has taken a major hit. Because of the downturn in tourism, expect more persistent and aggressive touts, but prices are lower and you can avoid the gigantic crowds that, at other periods, were typically overflowing the marvelous sights. The more recent counter-revolution and military putsch, like many events of its sort, has brought repression, death sentences, and imprisonment for many Egyptians and foreign journalists, but has resulted in lower crime and reduced disruption for well-heeled foreign tourists. The regularity and richness of the annual Nile River flood, coupled with semi-isolation provided by deserts to the east and west, allowed for the development of one of the world's great civilizations. A unified kingdom arose around 3200 BC, and a series of dynasties ruled in Egypt for the next 3 millennia. The last native dynasty fell to the Persians in 341 BC, who in turn were replaced by the Greeks, Romans, and Byzantines. It was the Arabs who introduced Islam and the Arabic language in the 7th century and who ruled for the next 6 centuries. A local military caste, the Mamluks, took control about 1250 and continued to govern after the conquest of Egypt by the Ottoman Turks in 1517. Following the completion of the Suez Canal in 1869, Egypt became an important world transportation hub, but also fell heavily into debt. Ostensibly to protect its investments, Britain seized control of Egypt's government in 1882, but nominal allegiance to the Ottoman Empire continued until 1914. Partially independent from the UK in 1922, Egypt acquired full sovereignty following World War II. The completion of the Aswan High Dam in 1971 and the resultant Lake Nasser have altered the time-honored place of the Nile River in agriculture and the ecology of Egypt. A rapidly growing population, the largest in the Arab world, limited arable land, and dependence on the Nile all continue to overtax resources and stress society. The government has struggled to prepare the economy for the new millennium through economic reform and massive investment in communications and physical infrastructure. Climate. Egypt is largely a desert, an extension of the Great Sahara that bans North Africa. Save for the thin strip of watered land along the Nile River, broadening into the Nile Delta, very little could survive here. As the ancient Greek historian Herodotus stated, Egypt is the gift of the Nile. Generally, the summers are hot and dry and the winters moderate. November through March are definitely the most comfortable months for travel in Egypt. There's almost no rain in the Nile Valley, so you won't need wet weather gear. The climate, however, does vary a little bit depending on where you are in the country. On the north coast along the Mediterranean Sea, a thin strip of land stretching from the sea to 50 kilometers southwards receives some of the most heavy rain in the country during winter months. Thunderstorms along with heavy rain showers that often last several hours are not uncommon here, such as in Alexandria, Marsa Matruh, and other coastal areas, and even the Delta. In some years, The rainstorms can last for the whole day or so, though the rain tends to be less heavy. Hail is also not uncommon, especially out in the desert, where the weather is usually colder and allows for ice to fall and even frost to form on non-rainy days. In the Sinai Mountains and also the Red Sea Mountains, which stretch along the east side of the country along the shore of the Red Sea, there is generally more rain as rain clouds tend to develop when warm air evaporates and rises as it moves across higher terrain. Floods in these areas are a common weather phenomenon, as so much rain can fall in a very short amount of time, often a day or two, with thunder and lightning as well. Because of the desert and lack of abundant vegetation, the water from the rain quickly falls down across the hills and mountains and floods local areas. In fact, every year, there are stories in the local newspapers about flash floods in areas of the Sinai and also in Upper Egypt, southern Egypt, such as in Asyut, Luxor, Aswan, Sohuk, etc. These floods, however, only generally happen 2 or 3 times a year, and often do not happen at all in some years, depending on the weather. When they happen, though, it is often in early times of the season, such as in September, October, or late winter, such as in February or March, often the rainiest season in Egypt. Thus, one should be careful when venturing out into the desert or camping in certain areas, as water can suddenly rush down from the nearby mountains and hills. It can sometimes carry a quite strong current that has been known to break down homes of rural people who build their homes from mud, bricks, and other weak materials. It is not surprising to hear that some people drown in the floods, which is strange for a desert country that doesn't receive much precipitation. Also in higher elevations, such as on top of the Sinai Mountains, temperatures can drop much more than the surrounding areas, allowing for snowfall in winter months, since temperatures can drop down to below freezing, as well as formation of frost even in the low-lying desert areas, where the temperatures are generally several degrees colder than in the cities. December and January are usually the coldest months of the year, although it is normally warmer the farther south you go and within the bigger cities. Visitors should be aware that most houses and apartments in Cairo and Egypt do not have central heating, like countries with colder climates, as the main weather concern in Egypt is the heat. Therefore, even though the weather might not be so cold for the Western traveler, inside the apartment it might be even colder, as the temperature inside homes is generally a few or several degrees colder than out in the street. Terrain. Egypt consists of a vast desert plateau interrupted by the Nile Valley and Delta, along with the Sinai Peninsula. Portions of the Nile River Valley are bounded by steep rocky cliffs, while the banks are relatively flat in other areas, allowing for agricultural production. Regions. The country is divided into 6 regions: Lower Egypt, Middle Egypt, Upper Egypt, Western Desert, Red Sea Coast, and Sinai. Lower Egypt. Lower Egypt is the northernmost part region of Egypt, which consists of the fertile Nile Delta between Upper Egypt and the Mediterranean Sea, from El Ayat, south of modern-day Cairo, and Dashur. Historically, the Nile River split into 7 branches of the delta in Lower Egypt. Middle Egypt. Middle Egypt is the section of land between Lower Egypt, the Nile Delta, and Upper Egypt, stretching upstream from Asyut in the south to Memphis in the north. Upper Egypt. Upper Egypt is the southern portion of Egypt and is composed of the Nile River Valley, south of the delta and the 30th parallel end. It thus consists of the entire Nile River Valley, from Cairo south to Lake Nasser. Western Desert. The western desert of Egypt is an area of the Sahara that lies west of the river Nile, up to the Libyan border, and south from the Mediterranean Sea to the border with Sudan. It is named in contrast to the eastern desert, which extends east from the Nile to the Red Sea. Red Sea Coast. The Red Sea Coast is a region of eastern Egypt along the 800-kilometer western shore of that sea, from Port Suez in the north to the Sudanese border in the south. Egypt's Sinai Peninsula also borders the Red Sea and has a resort strip but is governed as a separate region. Sinai. Egypt's Sinai Peninsula is a sparsely populated desert region between the Red Sea and the Mediterranean Sea. On its southern tip, Sharm el-Sheikh Resort is a base for diving and snorkeling around the reefs of Ras Mohammed National Park. Inland, 6th century St. Catherine's Monastery is near biblical Mount Sinai, where the 2,285-meter summit is renowned for its sunrise views. Prominent cities. Cairo. Cairo, Egypt's sprawling capital, is set on the Nile River. At its heart is Tahrir Square and the vast Egyptian Museum, a trove of antiquities including royal mummies and gilded King Tutankhamun artifacts. Nearby, Giza is the site of the iconic Pyramids and Great Sphinx, dating to the 26th century BC. In Gezira Island's leafy Zamalek district, 187-meter Cairo Tower affords panoramic city views. Alexandria. Alexandria is a Mediterranean port city in Egypt. During the Hellenistic period, it was home to a lighthouse ranking among the seven wonders of the ancient world, as well as a storied library. Today, the library is reincarnated in the disc-shaped ultramodern Bibliotheca Alexandrina. The city also has Greco-Roman landmarks, Old World cafes, and sandy beaches. Its 15th century seafront Cape Bay Citadel is now a museum. Port Said. Port Said is an Egyptian city at the northern end of the Suez Canal on the Mediterranean Sea. A concrete lighthouse dates from the canal's opening in 1869. On the waterfront is the former department store Simon Arts. Now disused, the Art Deco building offers a glimpse into the past to when Port Said was a cosmopolitan trading hub. Nearby is the Islamic-style Suez Canal Authority building with its green domes. Aswan. Aswan, a city on the Nile River, has been southern Egypt's strategic and commercial gateway since antiquity. It contains significant archaeological sites like the Philae Temple Complex on Akhilgia Island near the landmark Aswan Dam. Philae's ruins include a columned temple of Isis dating to the 4th century BC. Downriver, Elephantine Island holds a temple of Nome from the 3rd dynasty. Luxor. Luxor is the city of the east bank of the Nile River in southern Egypt. It's on the site of ancient Thebes, the pharaohs' capital at the height of their power during the 16th to 11th centuries BC. Today's city surrounds two huge surviving ancient monuments, graceful Luxor Temple and Karnak Temple, a mile north. The royal tombs of the Valley of the Kings and the Valley of the Queens are on the river's west bank. Hurghada. Hurghada is a beach resort town stretching some 40 kilometers along Egypt's Red Sea coast. It's renowned for scuba diving and has numerous dive shops and schools in its modern Sikala district. There are many restaurants, bars, and nightclubs, while the old town El Dahar is home to traditional Egyptian coffee shops and souks. Hurghada's long stretch of sandy beach is lined with resort hotels. Other destinations. Abu Simbel. Abu Simbel is a historic site comprising two massive rock-cut temples in the village of Abu Simbel, Aswan Governorate, Upper Egypt, near the border with Sudan. It is situated on the western bank of Lake Nasser, about 230 kilometers southwest of Aswan. Dahab. Dahab is a small Egyptian town on the southeast coast of the Sinai Peninsula in Egypt, approximately 80 kilometers northwest of Sharm el-Sheikh. Formerly a Bedouin fishing village, Dahab is now considered to be one of Egypt's most treasured diving destinations. Karnak Temple. The Karnak Temple complex, commonly known as Karnak in the Middle Kingdom, circa 2000 to 1700 BCE, and continued into the Ptolemaic Kingdom 305 to 30 BCE, although most of the extant buildings date from the New Kingdom. Memphis and Saqqara. It is Egypt's largest archaeological site and is divided into north and south areas. The main monuments, including the Step Pyramid, are in North Saqqara. Nuweiba. Nuweiba is a coastal town in the eastern part of Sinai Peninsula, Egypt, located on the coast of the Gulf of Aqaba. Sharm el-Sheikh. Sharm el-Sheikh is an Egyptian resort town between the desert of the Sinai Peninsula and the Red Sea. It's known for its sheltered sandy beaches, clear waters, and coral reefs. Naama Bay, with a palm tree-lined promenade, is filled with bars and restaurants. Ras Mohammed National Park is a major diving destination with marine life around the Shark and Yolanda reefs and the Tessel Gorm wreck. Siwa Oasis. The Siwa Oasis is an urban oasis in Egypt. It is situated between the Qattara Depression and the Great Sand Sea in the Western Desert, 50 kilometers east of the Egypt-Libya border and 560 kilometers from the Egyptian capital city of Cairo. Saint Catherine. Saint Catherine is a town in the South Sinai Governorate of Egypt, situated at the foot of the mountain Mount Sinai. The city is the site of Saint Catherine's Monastery. The city is 1,586 meters above sea level and is 120 kilometers away from Nuweiba. Taba Heights. Taba is an Egyptian town near the northern tip of the Gulf of Aqaba. Taba is the location of Egypt's busiest border crossing with neighboring Eilat, Israel. Valley of the Kings. The Valley of the Kings, also known as the Valley of the Gates of the Kings, is an area in Egypt where for a period of nearly 500 years from the 18th dynasty to the 20th dynasty, rock-cut tombs were excavated for pharaohs and powerful nobles under the New Kingdom of ancient Egypt. Visit Egypt, the mesmerizing yet mysterious country in North Africa.